Hey guys, it's Jim here, and today I'm going to be comparing the new Harley Benton SC550 with an old 1998 Epiphone made in Korea Les Paul. Now normally in these kinds of videos you would expect me to get right into the playing comparison of these two to check out the tones. In this specific example, that's not really what I want to focus on. I am going to be playing clips, so you will be able to hear how these two specific instruments sound compared to each other. However, I don't feel it's a fair comparison because the Epiphone has the PRS McCarty 594 single cut pickups in it and a Mojotone wiring harness, whereas the Tesla pickups are all stock on the Harley Benton. So when you're talking apples to apples, it's not really a fair comparison at that point. And one other thing I'd like to get out of the way here, I know you can't purchase a Korean Epiphone new anymore. So in that aspect, the comparisons already by default, it's not going to work in a traditional standpoint. However, when you consider that the Chinese factory that's been making the Epiphones has been doing so for quite some time, I have no doubt that the quality is going to be just as good, if not better, than this Korean one, despite what some people on the internet will think. But before I start giving my opinions on these and what I think both are good for, because I do think both are good, I am going to get the playing out of the way. We're going to start with some clean tones, just basic stuff, and then a little bit of dirt on the bridge and the neck pickup. Alright, now that we've heard what they sound like, I want to start with the feel of both of these instruments. Despite both being Les Paul shaped guitars, they feel very different in your hands and in your lap. The Harley Benton really reminds me of the ESP line of the single cuts. There's just something about it. The neck is a little bit thinner on it, and even though that's a 60 slim taper on the Epiphone, it still feels much more like a Gibson. This feels more like a modern guitar. Now, I'm not going to touch too hard on the fact that this has the neck cutaway as well at the bottom for the upper fret access on the Harley Benton, but just the way that the guitar actually sits in your hands, it doesn't feel like you're playing a Gibson. And if that's something that you're really after, if you're looking for a cheap Gibson feeling guitar, that might not be your ticket towards it. Now, tonally, I actually prefer the Harley Benton, and I think it has to do with the actual sound of the instrument, and that might have to do with the frets themselves as well. Now, one thing that often gets overlooked, in my opinion, when people are comparing guitars or even just trying individual guitars is noticing how they sound not plugged in. And now the Epiphone. Now, when you hear them in that context, the Harley Benton sounds infinitely more lively than the Epiphone, and I'm going to chalk the majority of that up to the fret wire. The stainless steel frets on this have so many advantages to them, and the fact that they're coming on a guitar in this price range is just, it's out of this world, and it's something that you would have never thought 10 or 15 years ago would be available for $300. Whereas the Epiphone, another thing that's happened with that guitar is there has been significant fret wear on the first 3 frets. The guitar still plays fine, but the divots, they've really started to show. And that might be something that you also have to consider when you're looking at the long haul. Yes, this guitar has made it 23 years, and it doesn't need a refret right now. However, the wear really is starting to add up. Whereas with the Harley Benton and the stainless steel frets, as long as the rest of the guitar stays together, which I see no reason why it really wouldn't, then you're gonna have longer lasting frets, and in my opinion, better sounding frets, and frets that aren't gonna dull out either. Now, there was a point where I was doing the clean portion of the demos. I was on the neck pickup of the Epiphone. I had to stop playing, and I actually checked the pickup because I wanted to make sure it wasn't too close to the strings compared to the Harley Benton. And no, it was the same distance. It's just such a bigger sounding guitar. It's much more akin to what you would expect out of a Les Paul. Whereas with the Harley Benton, it's a little more in line, like I said, with those ESP guitars or something like that, maybe an Ibanez when it comes to that kind of tone. And for curiosity's sake, I took out the tape measure and I measured the width of the bodies themselves to see if there was a big difference, because I know some of these guitars, Les Paul style, are a bit thinner than they're supposed to be. Well, if you're going by traditional standards. And no, they were both identical in the width, so it couldn't have been that. That means the tone wood themselves, I think it's just a little bit brighter and a little bit more focused again on the Harley Benton. And to some of you, this might seem like the most obvious conclusion, but it really is true. If you want something that feels a little bit more like a Gibson guitar, then the Epiphone's probably a better shout. But if you want something that's a little bit more modern, that is kind of its own thing, really, the only guitar that I've played that feels close to it is the ESP Eclipse series. And I think the Harley Benton, just, you can't beat it. And especially when you consider that comes with full-size pots and decent pickups in it already. It has the stainless steel frets. The neck is fantastic on it. It has the neck carve for easy access. I know it sounds like I'm really biased here, but I don't see the extra value in spending more money for an Epiphone. Even if you buy it used, you're still gonna spend a little bit more on something like that. I guess if you're thinking maybe resale value, that might be another reason to tend to lean towards Epiphone. However, one thing that really surprised me when I started to look on Reverb, and guys, if you're looking for Harley Bentons, don't buy them on Reverb. What are you doing? There are people that are buying these for almost 1.5 to up to 2 times of the actual cost while they're still available from Thomann new. And it's just weird to me. So maybe the value is a little high. Maybe some people just don't want to do what I do and import these guitars in the first place. But to sum this up, I think you know where I'm going with this. If I had to pick between the two, I'm leaning towards the Harley Benton. I feel like you're getting a lot more. You're getting a brand new instrument for less money. There's a lot more value. It's going to hold up better with the frets. The electronics are great as is. It doesn't need anything to be really good. The only thing I would say I would potentially want to change on the Harley Benton are the tuners. They're not a very good ratio. They're very, very loose in that sense. But other than that, fantastic guitar. Can't recommend it enough. And if you're looking more for a Gibson style and a Gibson feeling instrument, the Epiphone might be a little bit better for you. And I've played a bunch of those from all sorts of guitar makers, all sorts of factories all over the world. PRS, Greco, Tokai, Orville by Gibson, and they all lean a little bit more towards that traditional Les Paul feel, whereas the Harley Benton feels much more like a modern guitar with a classic shape. So I want to hear from you guys in the comments down below. Do you own guitars from either of these brands? If so, what do you think about them? Are you happy with them over the long run? Do you want to upgrade them? Have you already upgraded them? And other than that, leave a like if you like what I'm doing on this channel. I really do appreciate that. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you tomorrow for another guitar related video. Take it easy, you guys.